Hey guys, what's going on? It's Tyler from Nelly Security, and in today's video, we're going to take a deep dive into the Hanwha web interface. We're going to look at the web interface for individual cameras. We're also going to briefly look at the web interface for the NVR as well. So if you are interested in learning more about what kind of experience you can expect from our new Hanwha line of products, this is the video for you. So let's go ahead and jump right in. In case you haven't heard, Hanwha A-Series has dropped at Nelly Security. We have several videos walking you through what Hanwha is, what the A-Series line is. We even have a video walking you through setting up a system on the NVR interface. Well, in today's video, we're going to focus more on the web interface. We're going to spend most of our time here looking at the individual cameras. However, we are also going to look at the NVR web interface just to see how it differs. Again, we already have a video setting up an NVR from scratch, so if you are more interested in learning about the details of the NVR, I will leave that linked down in the description below. Go check out that video. That'll help you get up and running with your NVR in no time. But for now, let's go ahead and jump into this web interface. So here is our web interface. I'm currently in the Edge browser. But this is not Internet Explorer mode. That's because these cameras don't have to be run through Internet Explorer. You can run this web interface in most modern browsers, whether you use Edge, Chrome, Firefox. I prefer Edge, but this experience is going to be very similar no matter what platform you're using. I've got one here for my IP camera. This is a camera connected outside, just connected directly to a PoE switch. This isn't going through any NVR. And then in this tab, I do have my NVR set up. This is the same NVR that we used in the last video, so all the settings are pretty much the same here. But for this camera, it's brand new out of the box, so we need to set a password. With Hanwha devices, there is no default password when you log into a camera for the first time from the web interface, or when you add a camera to an NVR for the first time. That's when you're going to set your password. So we have a good password here that we use at Nelly Security for stuff like this. So I'm going to go ahead and punch that in and click apply. And there we go. No, I don't want to save that password. And it instantly logs me into this camera here with this new password. Now, before we jump in and take a look around, I do want to emphasize that this is the web interface for the A-Series product line. Currently, at the time of recording this video, A-Series is the only Hanwha line that we carry at Nelly Security. It's the only line that I've messed with personally, so I can't guarantee that this interface is going to look the same for other product lines in the Hanwha family. In fact, I would wager to say that there are probably a lot of differences since these cameras are geared more toward lower end applications. If you have another Hanwha product line, maybe with a lot more advanced features, this might look a little bit different. Again, I'm not entirely sure about that. In the future, we will bring on more Hanwha products and we can get more into the specifics of the differences between these product lines. But for now, we are just purely focused on the Hanwha A-Series web interface. This is the live view. It looks pretty standard. It's very clean, very modern looking. This isn't what I'm used to seeing with these security camera manufacturers. The UI, the web interfaces are never really that pretty. They're just very functional. This one, I like the way this looks. It is functional, but it also looks great. So as you might expect, we can come down here and we can capture an image and it'll save it to an image file. We can open it up right here. It saves it directly to our downloads folder, which is nice. We can start a recording, see what happens when we stop it. Looks like, yeah, that also saves it directly to our downloads folder or, wherever you have your browser set up to save downloads. That saves you an extra step of having to go into the configuration and set up what folder you want your downloads to go to. It's very streamlined.
I didn't get that. Could you try again?
Did I say A-Series again? What was I saying? Here you can change the format of the videos that you're going to be downloading. You can choose between AVI and zip. AVI, just like what it sounds like, it's straight up the AVI video file. If you select zip, however, it's going to compress the AVI file into a zipped folder. It's also going to give it encryption for an added layer of security. If you need your video clips to be a little bit more secure, you can do that. So you can see if I click record now, it's going to ask me for a password. Just going to type admin, click OK, and I'm going to click stop. Now we can see in my downloads folder that I now have this encrypted file. If I open it up, right click, let's extract it. And it's actually going to have a problem extracting because it is encrypted. So for this, you might need some kind of proprietary program from Hanwha. I'm not entirely sure how to open these encrypted files. We also have a pixel counter, which is a really cool tool to have. So I can click and drag to see how many pixels are in the screen. This is actually super handy because, and we'll see this later when we go in to set up some intelligent events, there is no AI detection in these cameras, so you can get a lot of false events with line crossings, intrusion detections, that kind of thing. But you can also set up minimum and maximum sizes on these intelligent events just to make sure that if something is like a squirrel's running across the line, it's not going to be triggering the event if it is smaller than the minimum size filter. I hope that makes sense. We'll check that out in a little bit, but that's something that this pixel counter can be really useful for. If you want to track vehicles that are this size, we can say, okay, I don't want to track anything smaller than 224 by 107 pixels. That's going to take a lot of the guesswork out of setting up these intelligent events later. And if we want to get rid of that box, we can just click that icon one more time. We have this information overlay panel, which tells us the profiles. We're going to talk more about video profiles in a little bit, but this is essentially your different streams, and it's going to show you how many users are currently interacting with that stream. Right now we have our H.264 stream active, and we can see the current bit rate, we can see the current frame rate, and again, how many users are active, which is just me. I'm the only user connected to this account, so it's showing 1 right there. But if you had multiple users set up, maybe some of them were viewing this camera on their phones, maybe some of them had this up on their NVR, you could see here how many users were interacting with your live feeds. This can just be helpful for troubleshooting, for seeing how much bitrate you're taking up, for maybe finding areas that you can improve your streams. And then down here we have our current user. We can see the connection status down here. We can also see what IP address the users are viewing the live stream from. Really helpful stuff right here. We can, of course, make this different aspect ratios. I like to keep it there so it's not stretched, it's not zoomed in. We can adjust some very basic video settings right here from the live stream. We can change the profile without leaving the live view. We can adjust the display brightness, sharpness, color level. All really handy tools to have right here at your disposal. Again, so you don't have to jump into the configuration settings all that much. You can do a lot of stuff right here from the live screen, which I love to see. We can also make this full screen. So that is pretty much it for what we have on the live screen. You can, oh, I forgot about this. You can use your mouse wheel to scroll in and out, but I would advise caution. There are actually no maximum zoom parameters set up, so you can just zoom in forever until the camera crashes. So be careful with that. Don't do that. Let's move on to playback. We can see that there is no storage device activated. That's because there's not a micro SD card in this camera. If there was a micro SD card, we could view playback here, and we'll take a look at the playback screen here in a little bit when we head to the NVR. But it looks exactly how you'd expect. We can filter by events. We can change the time. We can export clips. And that is pretty much the playback screen. We don't need to spend much time here. Now let's jump into configuration. We have a basic tab, video and audio. We have network, event, analytics, and systems. The system tab. This is, again, pretty stripped back and basic stuff. We don't see a whole lot of tabs over here. Obviously, each tab has its own sub-tabs, and we will dig into each of those here in a second. But I just want to point out how clean and minimalist this whole interface looks. Even though these cameras do have some pretty advanced features for entry-level cameras, they're not incredibly advanced, but there is a lot that you can do from the web interface. And yet, at the same time, it just looks great. It's clean, it's minimalist. So under the Basic tab, we have your video profiles, your users, your date and time setup, and your IP address setup, and your port setup. Most of this is pretty self-explanatory, so the only thing I'm going to talk about here is video profile. If you're used to UniView, if you're used to A-Series, pretty much any other security camera line that we sell here, you are used to having multiple streams. You know, you've got usually your main stream and your substream. Sometimes you've got a mobile stream. With Hanwha A-Series cameras, there are no strict streams like this. Instead, what we have is video profiles, and these are all fully 100% customizable. It comes already loaded with 4 video profiles here: MJPEG, H.264, H.265, and mobile. The only one that you can delete here is mobile, and I'll just go ahead and do that so we can create this from scratch. The other 3 cannot be deleted, but you can add more video profiles to really customize your streams and your client's streams in a way that is fully set up just for their unique situation. So like I said, we'll just go ahead and recreate that mobile profile. So let's say that this is going to be the profile that either we use or that our clients use when they are viewing the cameras from their mobile device. We can completely set these settings exactly how we want them. For this, we probably want it to be H.264. We don't want it to be the default profile. This isn't the edge recording profile. This is only the profile that people are going to use from their phones. We can adjust the resolution. So we have the full resolution available to us here, but since people are going to be viewing this on their phones, we probably want something a little bit smaller, maybe 1920, let's go 1280 by 720. We can lower the frame rate a little bit. Let's lower that to 25 just to save some bandwidth. Bit rate's fine. We'll do variable bit rate just to make sure that it is responsive to the network, wherever the client might be with their phones. We can enable dynamic GOV. I'm honestly not entirely sure what that means. We can enable dynamic FPS. The minimum, let's say we don't want to go under 15. So that way, if the user is on their phone and they're having bad connection or whatever, and the 25 frames per second is just too much, we can pull that back down to 15 if we need to. We could also enable multicast here in case we want to set up a secondary IP address that we can use to access the camera's feeds on this profile. But for now, I think what we have here is pretty good. So let's go ahead and apply that, apply the changes. And again, you can set this up any way you want. I'm not sure if there's a limit to how many profiles you can have. Profile 2. Let's just apply this. Invalid profile name. Okay. My profile. Just apply this. Apply the changes. Cool. Let's just add another one. Another profile. I'm not going to sit here and do this until it doesn't let me. But yeah, I mean, you can add quite a few. I love this aspect of the Hanwha cameras. I love the flexibility of Hanwha cameras and the customizability. It's kind of the same thing with the NVR interface that we looked at a couple of weeks ago. Everything is here for you to set these cameras up exactly how you need them, which makes these great products for security integrators because you're going to have clients from all different walks of life. You're going to have residential clients, commercial clients. All of them are going to have different needs. And with Hanwha cameras and the customizability that this offers you, you're going to be able to set these cameras up so that from their perspective, you know, they're never going to see this screen. To them, it's just going to work how they expect it to work. Little do they know, behind the scenes, you're in here tinkering with this to make it exactly what they need it to be. User management on these Hanwha cameras, I think, is going to be a little bit more important than user management on other cameras because they are pretty strict about how many places a user can be logged in at the same time. For instance, I'm logged in right here on this laptop. If I went to my Office PC just now and tried to log in, it would probably kick me out because it doesn't like more than one user being logged in at a time. So add users here. That's going to help you with making sure your camera is performing properly, making sure you can access your live feeds whenever you need to. But it's also going to be really helpful for that information overlay that we saw on the live view, where it shows you exactly where all of your users are logged in, what IP address they're using, what video profile they're viewing. It's all going to be super helpful for you. Video and audio, again, this is all pretty standard. Right here, this is really choppy, only because we are capturing iframes here. This isn't the actual live feed from the camera. If we come back to the live view, you can see that it is very smooth. But just for preview purposes, it is going to look choppy like that as you're adjusting some of these video settings. We have hallway view, mirror view, flip. We can enable privacy areas here if we need to cover something up. We can call this privacy, I don't know. And there we go. We can change the color of it if we need to. Go ahead and delete that for now. Let's come into camera setup, and here we have more image-related settings. We can adjust the sensor mode from 25 to 30. We can set up presets here, which you have 2 user-defined presets that you can adjust these however you need to. And then you have all these other presets that they provide you here. We can change SSDR, white balance, backlight, exposure, day-night settings, special settings. We can adjust the on-screen display. For instance, if we want to enable the camera title, let's add this, camera. We can enable date and time. And there we go. Now we can preview that to see the name up there. As we might expect with the customizability that we've gotten used to with Hanwha, we can customize this on-screen display a little bit more. We can change the X and Y axis for the elements on the on-screen display. So I can put it more towards the middle of the screen. Let's click preview so we can see what that would look like, and there it is. So you can really have a lot of control where you place these title overlays, because I'm sure you've been in that situation where your camera is set up in such a specific way that when the title overlay comes on, it covers up something, or it's just in a really awkward spot where it's hard to read. Now you have the control to move it over slightly, move it down slightly, move it wherever you want it to be on the screen. Great features to see. We can add multiple titles here. So let's just add a little description here. Parking lot. And I guess throw an arrow in there, because why not? They give us the ability to apply. Okay. And there we go. We now have a parking lot. But you can see it's actually on top of that, on top of the first title. So let's come into parking lot, and let's move it down to like 5. See what that does. We'll click preview. Oh, actually I moved it on the x-axis. I should have moved it on the y-axis. Let's move it up 5 and see what that does. We will hit preview. Okay, so 5 moved it quite a bit, but we do have that arrow. I'm trying to think what we could do with the arrows. I feel like we could come up with something really creative here. Like if we wanted to point, I don't know, at this car over here, maybe we could bring it down to like 6 and over to like, let's try 70 and 6. See what that does. Cool, we can move it over a little bit more. Let's try 85 and 6. See what that does. So you can get creative with this, since you can put more characters in there than just words. That's just me messing around. I'm going to go ahead and delete that one. Let's apply. We've got a smart codec here, which is basically an area of focus. So if there's a lot of movement happening on your screen, but you really only want to focus on a small area, you can draw a box around that, or a region of interest, I should say. And we've got the wise stream, which is going to be a lot like if you're used to Uniview's Unicode. Hikvision has something like this. Wise stream, you can set it to low, medium, or high, and this is going to save recording space. It's going to save bandwidth. You can have lower bit rates but still maintain the high quality video. If storage space or anything like that is useful for you, then definitely check that out. Network, nothing new here that you haven't seen before. All of these network settings that honestly go over my head. Click around here, see what there is to explore. Next, we've got event settings. Now, event setup on the individual cameras is a lot more limited than event setup on the NVR. Again, if you checked out that video from a couple weeks ago, you know just how much control and how much flexibility you have in setting up these events. It's a little bit more limited with the cameras, but it still gives you a lot of options. For instance, you have all of these different triggers over here labeled as type, a time schedule, so you can have a trigger based on an event that happens at the same time every day. You can have an event based on if the camera detects that it's being tampered with, if the camera detects that it no longer has sharp focus, if there is motion being detected. This is standard pixel-based motion detection. If there's an intelligent event being detected, which is your line crossing, your intrusion detection, or if the network disconnects, you can trigger an event. The events that we have are right here on this side, and they're very basic because a camera can't do much on its own without the help of an NVR. We can upload things to a server via FTP. Obviously, if the network is disconnected, we can't do that, so that option's not there. But say every single day at a certain time you want to send some stuff to your server, then you can do that. And we can handle that down here in the FTP and email settings. Let's say if motion is detected, we want to upload to FTP. We also want to send an email, and we want to start recording to edge storage. This is going to be the edge storage on the camera itself. This isn't going to send information to the NVR because that's all handled on the NVR side, not on the camera side. So whichever trigger you want to use, be sure to click the little check mark next to it, select which events you want to happen, and you're good to go. Coffee break. It's getting cold, which is not a good sign. That means this video is taking longer than I intended, but let's keep chugging along. Here we can set up our FTP configuration. We can set up the email profiles. We can manage our edge storage here, which can be an SD card or a network attached storage device. We can set up the time schedule, which again, what this is going to do is just trigger the event based on a time. So you can say every 60 minutes, we're going to send one image to FTP. We can do this all the time, or we can schedule this to happen during a certain time of day, time of week, whatever it is you need to do. And there we can manage the network disconnect trigger. Under analytics, this is where we are going to set up motion detection. So we have motion detection enabled here. We can do an include area, which we can only detect motion within this box. We can detect a motion outside of this box, or we can just detect motion across the entire field of view. But we also have this handy graph here that tells us how much motion is being detected. So we can use this graph to, we can adjust the level of detection. So if those cars driving by, we don't want those to appear on our motion detection event. We can just drag this line up above them so that cars driving by don't trigger the motion detection. Okay, so this line, we can put it wherever we want, and it's going to adjust the ability for certain motion detection to actually trigger the events. We can also adjust the sensitivity. So if we make this higher sensitivity, you can see that these cars crossing by, they do cause those lines to rise up higher. So let's drag this all the way back down so we can see. At 100 sensitivity, it gets to about a threshold of 20 when cars are driving by. If I bump this down to, let's say, a 10, it's really only barely getting up off the ground there. And of course, if I completely drag this box down to where that road isn't even a factor, maybe I just need to apply that. And there we go. We can see cars are passing by here. It's not detecting any motion. So yeah, that graph is super helpful for setting this up exactly the way you need to. You can troubleshoot this and test different things without actually having to trigger the events. Tampering detection, same thing. We have level of detection here to help us test that. Defocus detection, we have the levels there. IVA, this is probably what people are going to be most interested in, which is going to be your line crossing, your intrusion detection, your exit detection. I'm not entirely sure what common is, but we can set up our line crossing. We can change the direction of the line crossing to A to B, B to A, or both. We can add event settings here. We can set this to a schedule. And what I want to do now is come back here into event setup to show you that now you can see we have IVA enabled with FTP, email, and record all set up. So you can do this either right here from this event setup view for a high overview of what's going on, or you can set these same triggers and events from the menus themselves. If I click here and go back into the IVA setup, I can uncheck email. Then if I come back into my event setup, it's unchecked. So again, this gives you a high-level overview of what's going on with all of your events. If something accidentally gets checked while you're in here messing with different settings, you can come back here later and you can see that and you can fix it really easily without having to dive any deeper into the menu system. Have I mentioned that I love the Hanwha web interface? This is amazing. Let me make sure I haven't missed anything, but I think that pretty much covers the web interface for the camera. One more thing I do want to mention is if you look in this network setting, there is no option for the mobile app, the WiseNet application for remote viewing, and there are also no event triggers to send a notification to your mobile device. If you are planning to have remote access from your mobile device, you are going to need to connect your camera to a Hanwha NVR. The cameras themselves do not have remote access capabilities, so definitely keep that in mind. So now let's just jump over here into the WiseNet Recorder web viewer. This is the web interface for the NVR, and you can tell it looks very different. It's a very different style. That's because this is more designed after the HDMI interface. It's got pretty much all of those features right here on the web interface as well, so you don't always have to be physically present with your NVR going through the menus on the HDMI interface. You can do it remotely from your desktop computer or your laptop as long as you're connected to the same network. If we come into the search menu, again, we have this playback. It looks just like it does on the NVR. We can play back different scenes. We can look for different tagged events. The setup menu looks very similar to what we have here. The difference being we can add cameras here to our NVR. We can access the camera's individual web interfaces through this camera web viewer button. What that is going to do is open up essentially a web interface for that camera through the NVR. So you can see here my IP address is .200, which is the same as my NVR IP address, and it just adds this port to the end so that even though this camera right here, I don't know why it's so blurry, even though this camera right here is connected to the back of my NVR, I can still access it from the web interface just by clicking this camera web viewer icon here. And we can go to different channels and we can access the same type of menu. Let's go back to the live view. This one is not as blurry, but I am sideways. Hello. So let's come back to the NVR. Profile setup. I wish this worked a little bit smoother, but it doesn't, and that's fine. But we can set up different profiles based on recording, live viewing, and remote viewing. This is really helpful, and again, this is all based on these video profiles that we talked about with the individual cameras. However, you can't set custom video profiles for your entire NVR, at least not in a way that I've been able to find. Instead, you have to set them individually through the cameras. So for instance, you can see here I have all the standard profiles that come included with the NVR. I can click this edit icon, which again, this is just going to take me to that individual web interface. I can come in here and add a new profile. My new profile. And add everything that I need to add. Click apply. Now if I exit out of here, let's come back into profile setup. I now have my new profile right here, but this camera does not have the same profile available to it. It has my profile. That's something that I was testing earlier when I was trying to figure out if these could link up. But if you have a certain profile that you want to use for your cameras, you're going to have to set those up individually through the web interface. You can also set your camera password here. Again, like we talked about in the last video, when you add a camera to the NVR, it is going to add this password to the camera, because remember when we logged into the web interface for the camera, it didn't have a password automatically set. We had to set that through the web interface. This lets you cut that one little step out of the workflow. The NVR will automatically add that password for you, so you don't have to do it each time. But let's say you are also setting up a camera on your NVR that already has a password added to it. Well, if you're like us at Nelly Security, we have really about 2 or 3 passwords that we use most often. What I really like about this interface for the NVR is that we can add things here. So we have the default password. We can also add admin and 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 A exclamation point, which is one of our common passwords. We can add another one, which is admin ZAC1 XSW2 CDE3, another common password that we have. So this way, when you add a camera that's already set up to your NVR, it's going to cycle through these passwords. If one of the passwords works, then it's just going to add it to your NVR. Again, you don't have to do anything extra. If these passwords don't work, you got to do it yourself, but there's no way around that. I love this feature. Again, Hanwha's so good at cutting out little repetitive steps that end up being frustrating and taking up too much time. And everything else is the same as what we looked at, either with the camera web interface just now or with that NVR video from last week. That is pretty much it for the Hanwha web interface. I know we covered a lot just now. Thank you guys for sticking with me to the end. I hope this video was helpful for you. If you enjoyed it, please be sure to give it a like. Follow us on social media. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We have a thriving community of security professionals and security tech enthusiasts. And we love connecting with you. We love sharing content with you. So check out our contact information down below if you have any questions at all. Feel free to email us, call us. Our techs are always happy to help you out. Happy installing, and I will catch you in the next video.